All righty. Well, it is about that time. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. My name is Adam Cook. I'm the Associate Director of Employer Engagement here at the DePaul Career Center. Really grateful to have all of you here with us this morning to join us for our employer workshop series, Internship Best Practices Forum. For those of you who haven't joined us before, the employer workshop series is a series of events that we put on every year, designed specifically just to provide some value, some information, some knowledge and expertise from employer partners, from university professionals, and from our colleagues here at the university in terms of ways to get connected to DePaul, to elevate your recruiting best practices, and hopefully to seek out the best and most effective talent for your organization. So we're going to transition now over to our Assistant Director of Internships here, Libby Woodard. She serves on our employer engagement team and oversees not only internships for the university and helping employers get connected to DePaul, helping them write job descriptions, helping them bring about their internship programs and timelines, but she also services our media communication, arts and entertainment career communities, and our education, nonprofit, and government career communities, as well as a local expertise. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Libby, and let you rock and roll. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or the chat. And at the end, we'll have some time for some live Q&A, and we'll make sure we go through those.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Can everyone see my screen? Adam, does it look good?
Yep, everything looks great.
Awesome. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Like Adam said, my name is Libby Woodard. I am the Assistant Director of Employer Engagement and Internships at DePaul's Career Center. I typically oversee education, nonprofit, and government, and the media, communication, arts, and entertainment career communities. But I also, major part of my role is kind of serving as a university and employer-wide intern expert, I suppose. So happy to share some best practices. Again, like Adam said, everything that we share will be sent out, and I'll share this presentation with you guys, the recording, as well as some resources to dive into a little bit deeper. Our quick agenda for today, we're going to go over internships as a whole, different components of an internship, and then specific information about internships at DePaul if you're looking to hire DePaul interns. So why should you hire an intern? We're going to touch on a few of these things, but the really important ones that you want to kind of think about are developing a pipeline to a diverse and full-time hiring pool post-graduation. Like Marina mentioned, make sure not to set this expectation for students and interns, but you can be thinking about this kind of on the back end and seeing how they work and if they make a good fit and if there's an opportunity for them after they graduate or after the internship ends. Creating positive press for your organization through student testimonials, brand recognition, and peer-to-peer messaging. Like Adam mentioned, those negative experiences can also, get some press out there, maybe negative press, but there's also an opportunity to create positive press around your organization, and then in turn attract more interns that want to work for you. You can also gain valuable insights from a fresh perspective by establishing creative projects for your intern. So these students and interns are really capable of a lot, and might think of something and might do something that your full-time staff may have never thought about. So it's really an awesome opportunity to get some fresh perspective. And then provide leadership opportunities for your employees through supervision and mentoring the intern is a great opportunity as well. We use internships, or NACE's internship definition. So NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're not, it's a professional organization that most employers and universities use for best practices and terms and things like that. So the definition that they provide is that it's a form of experiential learning that integrates knowledge and theory learned in the classroom with practical application and skills development in a professional setting. Internships give students the opportunity to gain valuable applied experience and make connections in professional fields that they are considering for career paths, and give employers the opportunity to guide and evaluate talent. So think of that as you're, posting and as you're starting to think about internships. This is how most colleges and most employers define internships. Marina touched on this a little bit for the legality aspects, but it can sometimes be confusing when you're trying to distinguish between a job and an internship, especially if this is your first internship posting or program that you're putting on for your organization. But the top things to consider when kind of clarifying the appropriate classification of your position are expectations, length, and benefits. So the expectations for a job, obviously the expectation is that the employee fulfills those job responsibilities. In return, they get pay and benefits and things of that nature. For an internship, however, the expectation is more to learn and develop new skills through completing projects. So they might have a limited skill set or knowledge of the industry, and it's the expectation of the employer to teach them that, and that's that educational component that we mentioned earlier. The length of employment is important. Obviously, when you hire a full-time or part-time employee, it's typically permanent versus temporary for an intern. Usually the length of a quarter or a semester. Definitely look at the academic calendars of the schools that you're recruiting from to determine start and end dates or kind of ideas of when an internship would take place. But it is temporary, and it's usually a quarter or two or a semester or two at most. And then who benefits most? That's really an important aspect to think about. With a job, the employee is the one or the employer is the one that's benefiting most from the work they're providing. But with an intern and a student, the student is really going to be the one that benefits the most. They learn a lot. They learn their skills. They learn industry insights, things of that nature. Of course, we talked about those items that can benefit from the employer side of things, but usually with an internship, it's the student or the intern that's going to be benefiting most. Any questions so far? Are we good? Okay. This is an example of a recruiting timeline for like a summer internship. This is not the end all be all. It can definitely vary depending on industry and just bandwidth and being able to put some effort into this. But so don't feel, stressed or anything if you're not at a certain time at a certain month or at a certain point. But this is just an example of what is typically seen for a summer internship. So around January or February, you'll want to post the summer internship on Handshake and on your job board that you're using to recruit from. After about 2 weeks, you can start contacting candidates and conducting those interviews for the internship position. For March and April, around that time, you'll want to start making offers for summer interns, tie up any loose ends related to your summer internship program plans, and kind of finalize those start dates. And then May or June rolls around, you'll want to start that internship orientation if possible, a video or a meeting or whatever it is. Try and incorporate an orientation for interns, and then the internship will actually begin. And then around July and August, as the internship starts to wind down and starts to end, you can start evaluating the summer interns and make any employment offers if you want, and if you have the capacity to do so. Around September and October, we definitely encourage after the internship ends to stay in touch with your interns, especially if you want to hire them down the road. Maybe you don't have an open position now, but they were a great fit and you'd like to, stay connected with them. We definitely encourage that. And around this time, you can also start setting the budget for your next year's summer interns. And then November and December, we definitely encourage evaluating the actual program itself. Think about anything that you'd like to change or add or take away. And then before January rolls around, you start this process over again. You want to plan any necessary changes or improvements to the program itself.
Can I just one thing, Libby, to add is, first of all, I mean, if you want, feel free to take a screenshot of this. I mean, again, this will be shared later, all these resources on our website, but Libby mentioned this, but again, if this timeline is maybe a little bit long or you feel like you're a little bit late in this is just a suggested annual timeline. you of course can compress this or expand this as whatever makes sense to your organization. But, in order to keep things rolling throughout the whole year, this is a really loose kind of framework that would be really easy to go from zero all the way through, evaluation and reevaluation.
Definitely. Thanks, Adam. All right, so moving on from the kind of recruiting timeline of an internship, the job description is extremely important. A good job description will lead to hopefully qualified and excited candidates. So you want to put the effort here in the beginning and set all the expectations. Again, documenting everything, having everything in writing and upfront, so the student and the employer knows exactly what to expect. They want an internship. Students typically want an internship that will aid their long-term professional development. So describing your organization and the internship itself with as much detail as possible is very important. It'll help the student decide if they can picture themselves, within your organization, even within this industry or within this position. And you want to include, interesting facts on maybe like company culture, diversity, structure, specific skills that they're going to be taught, and things of that nature. Keeping it concise and detailed will lead to typically interested and qualified candidates. So going into each aspect of the job description, and I'll share in the next slide a example of all these things put together, but include the title of the internship position instead of just intern. Maybe it's marketing intern, community development intern, whatever it is that can kind of lend a little bit insight into what they'd actually be doing is helpful. That way, as they're browsing internships and it catches their eye, they can read more in the job description. Provide a brief summary, so just kind of a highlight of the responsibilities, things that they'll be learning, those sorts of items. And then, of course, the responsibilities, just as you would a regular, full-time, part-time job description, being very detailed about what the responsibilities of the position are. And then 4 and 5 are where it's going to be a little bit differing from maybe a job posting. The qualifications, will be your typical, if it's a degree or an experience or skills requirement, definitely, include that there. But keep in mind that, this is for an intern to learn these things. It might be a freshman or someone that's never had, professional experience. And this is their first internship or first kind of venture out into the professional world. So just keep that in mind that they might not have that experience, but if they have a career interest and they're passionate about the type of work that you're doing or about your organization, that could serve as a qualification. So definitely include that in there. So you're not warding off students that might really be excited, but maybe their degree isn't exactly, what you're looking for, but it could be related. Definitely include that as a qualification for interest. And then the learning objectives. This is where you can kind of showcase the specifics of what the student will learn, what the benefit is for interning with you to the student. So think about what projects they're going to be working on, who they'll be working with, what hard or soft skills will they be learning and kind of practicing, how will they be supervised and mentored. So being very specific of, the title or position that's going to be supervising them, or will they have weekly meetings with the rest of the team or other interns, and those sorts of things are important to include. And then will the intern have professional development opportunities? Thinking about all those and creating them in the job description is key, and really thinking about those learning objectives. And then lastly, of course, timeline and compensation. We encourage you to pay your interns. But of course, if you can't, that's, perfectly legal, and it's not a bad thing by any means, but really trying to create those learning experiences and making the internship worthwhile for students will help compensate that. And then be very specific with the end date, especially for unpaid internships. Typically, like I mentioned, it's going to be quarter long or semester long, depending on the student and the school that you're recruiting from. So this is an example. I know this is a lot of text, and I'll send this out, or Adam will send it out in an email as well as part of the internship best practices guide. This is in there, but I wanted to show an example of everything that I just kind of talked about. So like you can see, this is a very specific job title. Students know what they'd be doing. It's not just intern, it's marketing communications intern. summary description, duration and compensation, being very specific of how long the internship will last, and start dates are flexible because the intern, has different academic requirements, and the compensation. And then, typical duties that you would see in a job posting, and then those learning outcomes and benefits. So being very specific of what the student would be learning, what type of experience they'd gain, any kind of exposure to, professional development and networking and those sorts of things, and any other industry knowledge that they'd be gaining. And then just education experience requirement, it doesn't necessarily explicitly say they have to have a specific major, but maybe some sort of academic or work experience in this industry, or any kind of computer skills that maybe they learned in high school or in college. Those would qualify for the intern. Any questions on that so far? I don't know if we want to do questions at the end or.
We can do them whatever makes sense to you. We'll hold off the majority of them to the end. One question though, what's the most common, going back to that internships description, what's like the most common thing that you see in internship job descriptions that is either poor or omitted or missed?
The learning objectives. Like we mentioned, what are those specific things that students will learn when they complete this internship, just as you would if you were a teacher for a class? Okay, what are they gonna, learn after they leave this class? It's kind of a similar thought process. What are they going to learn after they leave this internship or while they're in this internship? And I see it a lot, like it'll be a great internship, from what I can see as an employer engagement person, as a professional. It's been seeing job descriptions all the time, but a student who's new to applying jobs or new to even an internship or anything, they wouldn't know how to decipher what that is and what the job description is if it's not explicitly stated. So explicitly state those learning objectives, the responsibilities, the skills or software, whatever it is that the student will be learning or will be required to have coming into it. I think that would be the most important thing to focus on, and something that I see missing from a lot of job descriptions.
Awesome.
Or internship description. Okay, so internships at DePaul, and just as a kind of disclaimer, this is again not everything that goes into an internship program. Of course, this is just kind of the big picture and highlights. I'll have Adam send out the best practices guide. Feel free to connect with our employer engagement team to talk about specifically building an internship at your organization if you have more specific kind of needs and questions. But I wanted to provide an overview for internships in general, and then now we'll kind of go into specific internships at DePaul. So one thing to keep in mind, I like to let employers know, at DePaul, our undergraduate students are required to complete an experiential learning requirement, some sort of experience within experiential learning. This can typically take place in like internships, undergraduate research, service learning, volunteer experiences, things like that. The most common is going to be internships because most people know what that looks like, and most students know what that looks like and how to find them. So there is a requirement for undergraduate students at DePaul. And then academic credit, we touched on this a little bit with Marina, but I get this question a lot of like, what do I need to do to provide academic credit for my intern? It's not necessarily what you need to do, it's what the student needs to do. It is going to vary depending on academic programs and departments. Some programs require an internship for credit. Some internships don't. You can still pay your intern even if they're doing it, for credit as well. But as long as you meet those requirements for FSLA, you can avoid that. But you don't really need to do anything other than provide maybe like a sheet or signing off on something that the academic advisor is sending you. But it is the responsibility of the student to make sure that they're going through their department and through their advisor to get academic credit for an experience. And typically it'll be like at the same time as their internship taking place that they'll be taking the class, kind of like doing reflection exercises and thinking about what they're learning in their internship and how they can use it moving forward. And then at DePaul, we use Handshake. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but if you're not, Handshake is our job posting software, job and internships, events, basically everything within employer, postings and such are going to be through Handshake. So DePaul was one of the first schools to adopt Handshake. So our students and alumni are very familiar with it. It's pretty user friendly. So we use Handshake. Definitely make sure to put your internship descriptions on Handshake. You can always link out to an external application process if you want. You don't have to collect applications and resumes through Handshake, but putting it on there as a means of getting exposure and getting students to see it, and then they can link out to your external software, whatever it is. That's perfectly fine, but definitely encourage you to post it on Handshake and think about those learning outcomes and reviewing your job description and making sure everything's looking good for that. And then career communities, Adam touched on this a little bit. At DePaul, we have essentially clusters of industries that students and alumni can opt into and explore different internships and opportunities throughout. So we have education, nonprofit and government, media communication, arts, entertainment, tech and design, healthcare and science, and business, entrepreneurship and consulting career communities. So if you have more specific questions about your industry, we have people in our office that are happy to help work through those questions and problems specific to your industry based on whatever career community you're in. And it essentially goes on, the thought process of major does not always equal career for students. So it kind of expands that to career interest and what they're interested in, maybe not exactly what their major is. So I would encourage you to think about that as you're posting your internship descriptions as well. And then just quick upcoming events for employers. We have our spring career fair that's going to be next week. It's April 8th. Definitely a great place to find good candidates for summer or even fall internships. Definitely encourage you to check that out. Registration is on Handshake. Spring interview day is another really good opportunity for talking with students and kind of knocking out a lot of the interviewing and hiring in one day. So I would definitely encourage looking into that. You can contact our colleague, Emily Comandera, for more information about that, or shoot us an email. And we're happy to get you over to them. But if you are hiring for interns for summer or even fall, you can think about attending that. And then I don't know if Adam, you want to talk a little bit more about the employer appreciation event, but there will be one coming up hopefully for our appreciation for employers in general.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit more about that at the end. Okay. We do have,
this is pretty much everything that I wanted to touch base on. Happy to open it up to questions. These are your contacts for each of the career communities within the Career Center, so our employer engagement team. So we have Jameson, Tech and Design, Emily is Business Entrepreneurship Consulting, Debbie is Healthcare and Science, and then I mentioned the two career communities that I oversee. So if you aren't sure where you fall in, just shoot us an email, recruitstudents at depaul.edu. Emily is including her contact info if you are interested in the spring interview day. Typically we're located in the Loop, but obviously right now we're all working from home. The Career Center, this might be helpful to know, the Career Center and all employer events and everything are going to be virtual through at least spring quarter. We're hopeful for a fall in-person return. Not sure exactly what that will look like, but for spring and summer, we're going to be most likely remote. So that includes, any employer events and things that you want to put out to students. But that is all I have for internships for now. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a number of questions here for you. The first is, what would you recommend an appropriate amount of hours to expect for an unpaid intern? And is that different during the academic year versus during summer?
Yeah, I think during the academic year, it's probably even more restricting for students because then if they're thinking about unpaid internship, full class load, and needing a part-time job for some sort of compensation, that is something to keep in mind. I think summer you could probably be a little bit more flexible. But I would say, anywhere from like 10 to 20 or 25 hours a week, I think is good. Especially now with everything or most things being remote, you might be able to offer some more flexibility for students to complete projects and things kind of on their own schedule, and then checking in with them, weekly or biweekly, whatever it is. But yeah, I would say probably within 10 to 20 hours a week. And then just being open with your student and having that open line of communication, I think is important, because they can let you know if like, no, I actually don't need to take a part-time job. I can, put more hours in this internship. Or if they're saying, I do need to have a part-time job because I can't sustain that without it, but I do want to do this job. So definitely have that conversation with the student, with the intern, but I would say probably 10 to 20 would be a good hourly expectation.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up of if you're not going to be paying somebody for the work that they're doing, being able to be flexible with like, well, you have to make money somehow, right? So how many hours am I expecting you to put in here for free versus, if they're commuting or if they've got rent to pay or whatever it may be, they've got to be able to offset, that income somewhere. And then, the differences of if they're working 25 hours or 20 hours a week unpaid, and then they're also in the middle of the school year taking a full load of classes, and then they also have to come up with rent and food and gas money and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with you, somewhere in that 10 to 20 range, depending on what the expectations are for work and in class and all that. So that's a great question.
Yeah, and you can definitely students can do some really awesome things, even if it's just 10 hours a week. You can still get some awesome, projects done and high quality experience for both the intern and the employers. So don't let that, scare you off from hiring a student. But yeah, I think it is important to think about and maybe just talk with the student as well.
And I would say the consideration of hours worked, what time those hours are, right? Like if I'm requiring my student to be 25 hours a week, Monday through Friday during regular business hours, that's going to be more of a burden on their schedule than saying, it's project based, it's 20 hours a week, but you can do your project whenever you want, right? Maybe we've got 1 hour here, 2 hours there where we're connecting. But if you can work in the evenings or on weekends or whatever, that obviously shifts that burden and expectation around a little bit as well. So another question here: if they do get academic credit, is the expectation of pay different? And where's the difference if this is a part of their course, part of their academic package essentially?
Yeah, I would definitely look at we'll send out the fact sheet from the Fair Labor Standard laws, but I don't think there's necessarily an expectation either way. Typically, you don't need to pay them if they're doing an academic credit internship, because that is, I believe, one of the factors on that sheet and on that kind of checklist that she shared. So there's not an expectation, but you're still welcome, obviously, to pay them. But there's not an expectation to, as long as they meet those other requirements for an internship.
For sure. Follow-up question here, kind of similar: summer hours unpaid. I would again kind of say the same idea, right? Like, if it's in the summer, obviously the time burden is going to be different without having that academic expectation there, and so there's probably some more flexibility, but a lot of the questions about pay, I would counsel, and I think, Libby, based on our conversations, you would counsel the same way of, what's the purpose and why are we not paying them? Is it because we don't have the budget? Well, great. What other value are we providing? Because that's totally fine. And also, what's our expectation of quality of intern? If somebody's really skilled and really high quality, they're going to have other competitive offers. And if there's, an opportunity between all things being equal in terms of professional development, and one's paid and one's unpaid, if they're a high quality candidate, they're going to most likely have a number of options on the table there.
Right.
You mentioned length of internships being, a quarter, 2 quarters, a semester, 2 semesters. In terms of weeks, is that somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks? What does that look like in terms of, especially if you're recruiting from multiple schools where the academic calendar is a little bit different? Is there kind of like a general month or week recommendation recommendation that you would give?
I would suggest probably 10 weeks. I think we have 10-week quarters at DePaul. So that would be every week that they're in school, they'd be doing an internship as well. So it could be maybe 8 if you wanted to give them like a buffer for like finals week or something along those lines. But I think 10 weeks is solid, especially for those semesters where they're obviously longer. But you can, of course, put whatever start and end date that you want, whatever week, however long you think it's going to take. If you think it's just a few projects that y'all need help with or whatever it is, that would obviously be a shorter internship. And it can still hold value. But if you're looking for a regular intern, I would probably say like 10 weeks is a good.
Awesome. Yeah, and that kind of project-based or almost like micro internships are still an opportunity. If you've got something specific that you want or need help with, and you think can provide a good opportunity for some professional development, portfolio building, whatever it may be, those significantly shorter micro internships are definitely a viable option for sure.
And also on that note, DePaul, obviously, I know this, but I don't know about other institutions. I would assume that others have this, but with the DePaul academic calendar, our students essentially have like a month off of school if they're not taking classes in between fall and winter quarter. So their fall quarter goes from like September to basically Thanksgiving, and then they don't come back to school until January, like the first or second week of January. So that might be an opportunity if you have a smaller project or want to crank out more hours a week and just do like a 4-week long internship or 3-week long internship. That might be an opportunity as well. And you could, think about that and hire it on or put it on the job description as well. When you're hiring, this is for 3 weeks. It would be ideal for someone, on their winter intersession or on their break. So also another opportunity to kind of get creative with timelines.
Yeah, 100%. There's another question here about unpaid internships and academic credit. The question is, they need to be tied directly to academic credit. And in short, the answer is no, right? The academic credit and pay of your interns are two totally separate issues, and maybe some concern topics, but maybe some concerns around adding that financial burden of having to take another class. There's no requirement for an unpaid internship to be tied directly to a class. The only requirement that we at DePaul have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Libby, is that undergraduate students are required to take an experiential learning credit class. So that's just a DePaul requirement. That's not a legal requirement. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. And so that's for DePaul students in general, but then also students might have a requirement within their program. I would assume that they could probably take their experiential learning requirement and use that as their program requirement as well. But it definitely varies between academic programs and departments. But yeah, there's no expectation of one or the other for academic credit. So.
Awesome. Last question here, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but the question is around how do you ensure that you're hiring a good intern? How do you test to make sure that they're quality and that they're capable of doing the things that you're asking? I have some thoughts on that, but happy to let you kind of chime in and take that one.
Yeah, I think one thing that has worked for employers and even for us at the Career Center is doing like some sort of project or like a response to an issue or to something that comes up frequently in your internship. So if you're interviewing the candidate and they seem good in terms of answering the interview questions and experience and those sorts of things, doing some sort of assignment, like if it's we're like a front desk student. I know we do this when we hire, or we started to do this when we hire our front desk student staff. We present them with the situation. This is an employer's calling and has questions about X, Y, and Z, and whatever it is. How would you respond in email format, or what would you do to create or fix this issue? And then you can evaluate that and have them even walk you through it. You could do like a project, a mini project of like, here's the scenario, spend an hour, on this max, and let me know, and like walk through whatever the project is or whatever the assignment is. And that can be part of the interview. You can walk them through it, or they can walk you through what they would do and how they came to that conclusion, depending on the work that you guys do on a daily basis or what the student would be expected to do. I think that would be a good indicator for how well they would perform at the job itself.
Yeah, I think that's great. Your interview process, ensuring that your interview process is measuring for the skills that you're wanting to. Hi, Kevin. That you're wanting to have present in that particular position and role, and maybe even if you're unsure about the scope of that role, maybe doing some sort of micro internship first. To test out, hey, what do we actually need from this role? What competencies do we need to test for? What skills do we need to ask about and have demonstrated before we fill this role out? So I think that that's a lot more about that interview process. And then also ensuring that you're writing a really solid job description of what you're looking for from a student and what you're able to provide from a student, so that from the get-go, you're attracting the types of students who have the skills and competencies that you're going to need. So awesome. Well, that's all of our questions. Can I have you share your screen again with that all that contact information again? Want to say again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Really grateful for your time. We're super excited to be able to share some information with you, connect with you in a bit of a different way. I've got at some point, if you saw with my shared video, I had some chicken scratch of our website back behind me on the whiteboard. You can always find us via phone at the contact information there. Reach out to us via email or recruitstudents@depaul.edu. Our website is careercenter.depaul.edu. We've got a page titled For Employers where you can find a ton of resources, a ton of white papers and PDFs and sample job descriptions and timelines and all sorts of stuff there, as well as reach out to any of us here with questions or recruiting conversations or issues that you run into. We're always more than happy to connect and walk you through those things. Just as a reminder, again, next week we've got our spring career fair. You can register for that via Handshake. I think the link was posted in the chat. And then for the spring interview day, which is a great opportunity to connect with students and even conduct and complete an interview on that day, that's going to be May 21st. And if you'd like to register for that, you can reach out to Emily Comendera, whose email is comende, KOMEND @depaul.edu. For any other questions, more than happy to have you guys reach out to us directly via phone or email. My email is acook49@depaul.edu. Happy to chat with you further as well. But that will do it. Again, thank you everybody for spending your morning with us a little bit, and look forward to chatting with you more in the future. Have a great day.
Thanks.